Greetings from sunny North Carolina. My name is Catherine MacKenzie, and I want to congratulate you on 40 years of encouraging storytelling in Alberta and beyond. Tales has certainly encouraged me to step outside of my comfort zone, that I would be recorded for Mary Hayes to use with her storytelling class at the college, to submit a story to Under the Wide Blue Sky, edited by Lisa Hurst Archer, to tell stories at Fort Calgary for Telebration, to tell stories on the CBC radio. But what I loved most was gathering with friends and sharing stories monthly at our tell rounds. And so, friends, I'm going to tell you a story today from Pleasant to Spain's book, 33 Multicultural Tales to Tell. And it's called Old Joe and the Carpenter. Old Joe lived far out into the country. His nearest neighbor was also his best friend. They had grown old together. They'd watched their children grow up, get married, and leave. And they'd comforted each other when their spouses died. And now all they had left were their farms and each other. But for the first time in their long friendship, they'd had a serious disagreement. It was all over a silly argument over a calf that neither of them needed. The calf had been found on his neighbor's property. Neighbor said it was his. Old Joe said it had the markings of his cow and it definitely belonged to him. And they started arguing back and forth, and rather than getting in a fist fight, they each stomped off to their own houses, and they hadn't spoken in weeks. And Old Joe was feeling mighty poorly. On Saturday morning, as he was putting the breakfast dishes away, there was a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone, and he was surprised to see a tall young man with a wooden box of tools at his feet and kindness in his eyes. He introduced himself as a traveling carpenter looking for work. If you have any job, big or small, I'd be happy to help you out. Joe thought for a minute, and then he stepped outside and he pointed. You see that house over there? That house belongs to my neighbor. And that creek separating our properties? That wasn't here last week. My neighbor hitched his plow to his tractor, dug a trench from the upper pool, and now there's a creek separating our properties, and it makes me so mad. I want you to build a fence, a high fence, so I don't have to see him at all. That'll serve him right. Can you do that for me? The carpenter smiled and said, I'll do my best for you, Joe. Well, there's lumber and posts and anything that you would need in the barn. I've got to go into town and do errands and buy some supplies, and I won't be home till supper time. But I'll be back then and we can take care of things. And so he left. And the carpenter went into the barn and he took everything he needed and put it down by the creek, and he started to work. And he measured and he cut and he nailed and he measured and he cut and he nailed, and he kept working right through lunchtime. And when the sun was just beginning to set, he was finished. And he looked at what he had done, and it was good. And just then, Old Joe came in his wagon filled high with supplies, and he got down and he looked at what the young man had done, and he didn't know what to say. It wasn't a fence at all, but a beautiful footbridge, complete with handrails, spanning one side of the creek to the other. And coming across the bridge right then was his neighbor with his arm outstretched. I'm so sorry about our disagreement, Joe. You can have the calf. I just want us to be good friends. Joe took his hand in his and said, You keep the calf. I want us to be good friends too. This bridge was a young man's idea, and I'm glad he did it. And the carpenter leaned down and hoisted that box of tools onto his shoulder and turned to leave, and Joe said, "Wait, my neighbor and I could keep you busy with jobs for several weeks." And the young man looked at him and he said, "I'd like to stay, Joe. I really would. But I have more bridges to build." Old Joe and the Carpenter. Thank you.